You're listening to
Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington. Way below acceptable. Way below acceptable.
On this week's episode.
But the one thing I've never accounted for is if I got injured by a marine animal in the water, which is like 1 in 11 million, by the way. It's like you're more likely to be struck by lightning twice than you are to be bit by a shark. So this is very uncommon.
Way below acceptable.
Hey there, Sticky Note listeners. This is your host, Erika Washington. And I am excited to be having this conversation with an old dear friend of mine. And we're going to talk about her getting bit by a shark. And that is the whole conversation. That is the main point of this conversation. This is why I reached out to her when I saw that she had made a video or a post on, I think it was Instagram, and saying that, she survived a shark bite. And I knew this woman to be an adventurer and a traveler. So I would love to talk about also all the travel she has done. But first and foremost, how in the heck she got bit by a shark. She works for a media outlet, and when I met her, she was doing a lot of data work in elections, and so she's very familiar within the space of the work that Make It Work Nevada does and the space of politics. So we may dive into that, we may not, because we may spend a whole hour talking about how in the heck you get bit by a shark and survive and end up on Sticky Note Conversations. So without further ado, it's Emily Ross. Welcome, Emily, Sticky Note Conversations.
Hey, Erica. It's great to see you again and hear your lovely voice. I miss working right next to you in an office. It was a good time. Wasn't a long time, but it was a good time.
It was a good time. It was a stressful time. I tell you, elections are stressful. I don't think people realize what the fast pace and all of the just pressure that is there when you're working on election work, and the hours are awful. The food makes you fat.
It was an interesting time. I was young and full of vibrancy, and now I have lived a much longer life than I think most 32-year-olds were. Someone described me recently. They said most people have their real age that they were like born at, and then their lifetime age of how much life they've lived. And she said that I was 65 years old at that. So I don't know whether that was a compliment or an insult. But yeah, so I've gotten to do a lot of really interesting things in my life. But yeah, I can tell you about the shark bite. It was wild.
Yeah, let's start with that. It was wild. So set this up for me. Where were you at? Why were you there? What was the trip about?
Okay, so my mom died a year ago. She was my last remaining parent. So I am officially an orphan at 32. But we're not going to get into that because then I'll just start crying. So we're moving past it.
Okay.
But my mom's best friend lives in Virginia, and her and I have always had a good relationship. I learned how to ride a bike at her house and things like that. And since my mom has passed, she's been really missing that link of being able to talk to my mom every morning. I talked every morning. And then I've really been missing talking to my mom every day also. So we've kind of been filling in that gap for each other. And it was a 4-day weekend. It was Memorial Day weekend. Today is actually my exact month anniversary of this happening. It happened in the 27th of May. And basically, I had called her literally maybe a week before. And I was like, did you know it's a 4-day weekend? She's like, I never know when it's a 4-day weekend because I am retired. So I'm just having a good time.
That's the life that I am looking forward to living.
Yes, me too. And I was like, well, it's a 4-day weekend and I really want to go somewhere. I usually go somewhere internationally for 4-day weekends, but I couldn't. And so I was like, where can I go that's still going to give me an international vibe? And then I was like, when I lived in Brazil, every Brazilian I knew who was rich had a house in Miami. And basically I've heard Miami is just basically Cuba and all these things. So I was like, okay, I'm hearing from different parts of the world that this is a big part of the culture. Is it's very Latino. And so I was like, okay, maybe Miami would do it for me. So I checked flights and I was like, these flights are very reasonably priced. And I think I'm just gonna like buy these flights for us and then we're gonna go to Miami. And so I called her and she's like, I'm in. So we go because it's about my mom's anniversary of her death when we were going, and we just really wanted to have like some Captain Cokes, my mom's favorite drinks, sip on the beach. So Miami was it. And the waters were gorgeous. They were as clear as I've ever seen it. I've never been to Florida. I've always thought of like Florida man and was like, why would I ever go to Florida? And I will never be back. I just want to clarify. I went one time and I will literally never be back, except for maybe to see my plastic surgeon, Paul Wagoda, who is the reason I still have an arm, because without Dr. Wagoda, I would literally not have an arm.
Shout out to Dr. Wagoda for keeping my friend's arm on her body.
Yeah. If you need a breast augmentation, he also does that. He's a plastic surgeon. Great. I've seen some work he's done. So anything,
I'll keep
Fort
that
Lauderdale.
in mind.
Yeah,
I'll
if you
keep
want
that in
anything. If he can save my arm, I feel confident that he can do anything really well. But so we did like 3 days in Miami. It's like the last day. And so we're like, we'll just drive up to Fort Lauderdale because Miami was a vibe and a half. But it was also like an insane party scene. We had gone to the nightclubs. My mom's best friend like danced on the stage with all the other girls. I mean, like we are having the time of our lives. We're cheersing my mom. We're doing all the things. And so the very last day, we're like, let's have a little bit of a slower day. I love to snorkel, and I brought my like snorkel gear. And so Patricia was like, let's just drive up to Fort Lauderdale so it's a little bit calmer. And then there's this area that has great snorkeling, and so we can go there. And so that area is called Lauderdale by the Sea, and it was legitimately like a 25-minute drive. So we get there, we rent our chairs and umbrellas. We snuck in our Coke and rum, as you do to the beach, because who has the money to pay for a beach drink? Not in this economy. Not in Trump's economy.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. It's called BYOB.
Yep. And so we were having a drink, choosing my mom. I took Patricia into the water so she could like splash around and have a good time. Waist deep water, took her out. I got hot, so I was like, I'm going to go snorkel for a bit. So I went out and got to go snorkel. And snorkeling was pretty terrible. It really wasn't very exciting. There was a dead crab that I watched for a while and some whitefish. And it was whitefish that were the problem. I guess those whitefish are called bait fish. They're what people use, or like what sharks eat. And the other thing is I've always known sharks exist. My dad is a sailor, so I grew up literally on a sailboat. I'm really used to the ocean, and I know that there are sharks in the deep ocean. But what is different is that Florida has a lot of sharks that are on the sandbars. So you go out, you're in waist deep water, there are just sharks around people. And that's because the food is getting closer to shore too. So overfishing, things like that, they're having a hard time getting the food source. So they're coming closer to shore because that's where the fish feel safer. So the sharks are coming closer to our shore. And I was underwater because I had my mask on and stuff. And I was just like floating around. And then I saw the shark tail. And I was like, wow, a shark. That's crazy. I'm so close to water. And I didn't think, there was no fear. Then I felt the pressure of the bite. Usually when something horrific happens, like you have some big tragedy, you don't feel the initial thing. So like most people who get hit by a bullet always say they like never feel it. They just feel afterwards. And that's basically what happened. So I felt the pressure, realized I had been bit when the water filled with blood. And if you've ever seen Jaws or Savages or any of those movies that have a person getting a shark bite, I don't know what they do in those movies to make it so realistic, but the water filling with blood is exactly what it looks like in real life. I'm sorry for your viewers, it's a little bit graphic, but this is what happened. I'm underwater and I see bits of my arm floating away into the ether and see my arm, and it's just the bone. That's the only thing I can see of my arm, and just immense amounts of blood coming off, right? Because you have your main artery on your arm. And I was like, oh no, this is bad. So I like squeezed onto down here.
So the shark bit where?
The shark bit my upper forearm and my hand.
in your hand, and so you were
Yeah,
squeezing down by your right above your
elbow. Yeah,
elbow to try to make like a tourniquet with your
tourniquet. Yeah.
hand.
It also
Yeah.
hurt really bad. So, when you're in
Yeah.
pain, you just squeeze
And
something
you're
near it.
underwater. Yeah.
And I'm
Yes, you're just holding on.
underwater. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm holding on. And then I see the shark come back at me. So what I ended up doing is pushing away with my foot the best I can. So what you're supposed to do when a shark is coming at you is you're supposed to take its nose and turn it upside down and push it away. That is like what you're supposed to do. I couldn't do that because I was first off panicked and second off like literally holding my like limp arm that's like falling off in the water. And then I saw it go away. And then once that happened, I knew I needed to get out of the water. So I stood up because I was, like I said, in waist deep water. I was not far out. I started screaming shark like they do in the movies because I assumed that's what I'm supposed to do. There were no lifeguards on duty. And I generally will swim if there's no lifeguards on duty. I'm a really solid swimmer. But the one thing I've never accounted for is if I got injured by a marine animal in the water, which is like 1 in 11 million, by the way. It's like you're more likely to be struck by lightning twice than you are to be bit by a shark. So this is very uncommon.
You might need to head down to the casino and make yourself a little bit of
I
money.
did, Erica. I tried it. I also did the lottery or the
Yeah.
lotto, whatever it's called in
Yeah.
Florida. I didn't win.
Yeah. That's when you know you spend a lot of time in bed. You're like the lottery, the lotto. What is that called there? That gambling you do at the gas station?
Yeah, it's at the gas station and you scratch it
Yeah,
off
you
or
get your
something.
scratch offs and you put in
Yep.
the numbers.
And I did that and I did not win. And I was like, well, this is stupid because every person was like, this is such odd chances. You should definitely do this or go to the casino. And so
But
I
did you
did all of
play the
those
number
things.
shark? Did you play the shark number? Because there are numbers that are associated with things. So,
No, I didn't
oh
know
yeah,
that. I obviously
that's
didn't even
a
know what it was called.
that's a whole thing. So, side story, I grew up in Michigan, grew up in Detroit. And my grandparents, everybody had a numbers man. They came around to the house, play numbers. I don't even know if that was legal, but that's none of my business. But we had they had numbers man. He come around, they correct your money or whatever because they play the lotto or the lottery, and it's the lottery, not the lotto, because that's different. The lotto is the bigger jackpot, but the lottery.
Okay.
And so, but there's books you can buy, like dream books. So if you have a dream and you dream about getting bit by a shark. You can look that up and it'll say what numbers to play. And then you can play those numbers either straight or in the box, what have you. And so, yeah, you can, there are numbers that are associated with things, people having babies and different sort of things. So there's a numbers
Interesting.
book. Yes. But anyway, we'll find
I
out
definitely
what
obviously didn't do
number
that.
shark is. And then we'll see about playing that. So you can
Yeah, try it
also be a
again.
millionaire at the same time.
I would
So
really like that.
so so you stand up and you scream shark. Does anyone hear you?
No, not originally. So I wasn't even like the farthest people out. There was kids around me too, which was why I was
Oh,
screaming shark. I wanted everyone to get out of
yeah.
the water. Um, but I was bleeding out. I was like rapidly bleeding out. The shark had taken my entire artery out of my arm, which means I was like losing a massive. So every time your heart pumps, is like more blood was just like squirting out of my arm. And so I get out, I scream shark. I get most of the way to the beach, and then the guy who was out swimming near me found me and like helped pull me back out of the rest of the water because you're like running in water, right? And I've already kicked the shark, so I'm pretty sure it's gone, but like my brain keeps thinking like it's gonna come get my like Achilles heel to like just pull me into the water. Like this small black tip shark who's like maybe 4 or 5 feet tall, like long, has decided that I am its meal. And it doesn't want to eat humans. I know it doesn't, but like in that moment, I've been bit. So I'm like, it's very much so fight or flight. And I fought and I was still like running. So I get out. Someone comes and wraps my arm in a towel. And the real reason I survived is there's two people very specifically, Kim and Ivan. And Kim was a nurse for like 25 years, and Ivan was the first responder. And they were both just happened to be at the beach that day. And they were able to make me a tourniquet out of a woman's hairband. Someone had like a giant Bowie knife and like sliced it open and then made a tourniquet. And so I was able to stop like bleeding out, which was fantastic. But because there was no lifeguards, if those two people weren't there, I don't think I would be here. The police took a while to get there. There was a large group of people who have now stood around me and are just staring at me, right? And I, this one woman came up to me and rubbed my back. Don't know this woman. She just rubbed my back and she's like, "Honey, are you okay?" And then she saw my arm, screamed, "Oh my God," and ran away.
Okay, so
Eh,
some people just maybe shouldn't be so nosy if they're not
yeah,
just gonna be
yeah.
helpful.
Or be nosy, but like be nosy from afar. Don't come rub my back, scream at my arm, and run away. How do you think that's going to make me feel? It was very weird, um, being in a shark fight because every moment my brain was like, "This is not real, and you are asleep." But it was real and it was happening. And I kept like moving my fingers because I was like, I don't want to lose my hand. So I'll like move my fingers and that'll prevent me from losing my hand. There is no scientific evidence to that, Erica, whatsoever. That's not real.
But you were trying. You were advocating for your own health and you were putting some
Yes.
effort in.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
And I will say, like, most people at the beach were really helpful. Someone was able to find Patricia and bring her over as the ambulance was like loading me up and they were asking about the shark. The original information that went out was that it was a barracuda bite, which I'm not really sure how that happened because the 911 call was a shark. And then the Florida wildlife like group that I called that like manages all that also has it as a shark. So I'm not really sure where the barracuda thing came from. But anyways, I get to finally get to the hospital. The ambulance ride was really long and so was able to get in to the ambulance bay and it was like a scene from Grey's Anatomy. There was like 20 people waiting outside for me like in a line. And you know it's really bad when you've got 20 people waiting for you in a line saying, like,
Yeah.
we are ready for you. My mom's friend Patricia gets there later on. They have to do this. They have to remove the tourniquets and put on this like thing that's like a splint type of thing. So it like takes your arm and it crushes it in a way to like stop the bleeding and to also close the wound as much as it can. And it's incredibly painful. So there was a lot of me screaming bloody murder about that.
You weren't getting any pain meds by then? You have to knock
They'd
me
given me
out.
fentanyl.
I mean, when your arm is coming off, I guess nothing is really
Yeah,
working.
nothing's really working in this moment. There was a doctor there named Dr. Bloom, and she like let me squeeze her hand so hard that she at some point just had to let me move to her other hand because I was just such excruciating pain. When I got to the hospital, it finally felt like I didn't have to be in charge of everything. Like before I knew I had to stay conscious. I had to keep talking to people. I had to get someone to call an ambulance. I had to get someone to make me a tourniquet, and I had to get someone to get Patricia
You had to stay alert.
to stay alive. And when I got to the hospital, I knew I didn't have to do that anymore. And there was like this just immense amount of like relief that came out of that. And so I'm in this like bay that is kind of a surgery center, but not really. Someone asks, is there anything that I can do? So I have them call my only remaining family member, which is my sister. And I tell her, I was like, hey, I need you to get on the plane tonight from either into Fort Lauderdale or Miami. And this is the hospital I'm at. I've been bit by a shark. And so the nurse relays this information. And I hear the nurse say, yes, I'm aware that it sounds like this is a prank, but this is not a prank call. This is really, your sister has been bit by a shark. And my sister's first instinct was like that this must be a prank call. And I don't really do pranks. So she was just like, I don't understand why she's decided now to prank call me. But I was like, no, no, I'm not prank calling. So we go into emergency surgery. It was between the trauma and the plastic surgeon were the two surgeons that were able to do some sort of surgery on my hand. They didn't have a hand surgeon specifically. And you know it's really good when they both have their surgeon caps on and they're like biting their nails with their arms crossed, like talking to each other in the corner
Trying to figure out
quietly.
what the hell to do next.
Uh-huh. I was like, ooh, this is gonna be good.
They're going to write
Uh-huh.
about me later in an article in the
You
next
know,
AMA or something.
yep. And what my PT described when I showed them the wound is spaghetti wrist because the shark had taken everything. So all the tendons, the nerves, everything were taken out, which means that I still don't have feeling in three fingers or all down here
Down into your palm,
into my
down
palm and most of
in
my
the
wrist.
inside
I
of
don't
your
have
wrist.
feeling. Yeah. And I have like this giant scar that honestly looks a little bit like a lightning bolt that gets like spread out into a couple of different areas.
Cute.
Yeah.
Cute.
And then I have some scarring on my knuckles because the shark got both the top of my hand, ripped it open, and my complete underarm.
You're listening to
Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington.
So it was gross. It was really gross. They had to do pretty much emergency surgery because those splint things that they were using to like hold my arm together were just like not working. And I remember one of the nurses at the time saying, "We're about to get blood on our shoes, boys, if you don't figure something out." And I'm pretty sure I got cauterized while still awake because of that. I'm not sure because, like, obviously I'm not going to look at what's happening, but they brought over a machine with electrical things and they did something and it hurt really, really bad.
Could you smell anything?
I did smell burning, but like also it could have just been my brain, right? Like trauma brains do weird things. But pretty sure I just like got cauterized. But so met my surgeon. By this time, the fentanyl has started, by the way. So thank God for that. I'm actually not in any pain. I have a great photo of me doing like a thumbs up before I go to surgery, and my arm is just dripping blood. Like there's blood on all the sheets. It's gone through all those puppy pads that they feed you. I've just lost so much blood, and I'm just like, just gone. So I meet Paul, and he's the one who's going to perform the surgery. He like explains that I'm not going to have feeling in these three fingers most likely, and that the recovery is going to be really bad, and that all of these things are going to be happening. Do I remember any of it? Absolutely not. Do I have a video of him explaining it? Yes. And the best part is the video is that he lifts my arm and just blood pools, like drips down. The bleeding was not controlled, but obviously, like I'm young and healthy, so they weren't too worried about it. So they get me into surgery. The surgery was 7.5 hours. So it finished at
Wow.
like 3 a.m. And I get put into the trauma wing and started my recovery. The next morning, I'm a bit of a crier. I like cry at the notebook. I cry at Dove commercials, things like that. I really cry when I've experienced a very intense trauma. So, big trauma, lots of crying. My sister, when she got to the hospital the next morning, found me by listening to me wailing. And she found my room. And the nurse, I guess, went up to her and was like, "Are you Jamie? We've been looking for you. We've been so excited." Because I guess I was just inconsolable. I'm on a lot of like pain medications and stuff too. So you're just pretty inconsolable. But yeah, that was what happened. It was a very good trip until that happened. That being said, I will not go back to Florida. I don't think that they have enough shark prevention and shark information. Will say that like places like South Africa and Recife, Brazil both have like large amounts of shark bites also, but they have how to take care of tourniquets, all this kind of stuff, lifeguards, warning signs, all of this kind of stuff. There were like three shark bites in Florida in the last month. And one of them was like a little girl, like the week after me. And she almost lost her whole hand. So it's an insane time to be around in Florida. So I don't think I will never be swimming back in those oceans. And I love the ocean and I think that it's a safe space. And I do not think sharks are bad people, bad creatures, or bad people, whatever you think, whatever you decide as a person. Um, but I do think that Florida has a problem where the overfishing has caused them to come really, really close to land, and there isn't enough funding for lifeguards in municipalities. I mean, I don't think I saw a lifeguard the entire time I was in Miami or Fort Lauderdale.
That's interesting, actually. And I think this is where I always want to connect the dot and the fact that everything has to do with policy at some point and
Yeah,
keeping
it's
us
because they cut all
safe.
their funding. And the municipalities then had no money. So it was like, do we do the thing that we get the most complaints about, which is roads, or do we keep the lifeguards? And lifeguards obviously have been cut. I don't know too much about Florida politics or anything like that, but I will say that I have lived in literally other like countries where there are shark problems, and they have significantly more structure, and the largest amount of shark bites in the world comes from Florida.
So, what is your road to recovery going to look like? How long will you
Painful.
be in physical therapy?
They don't know. The problem with what has happened to me is that I'm first off a programmer, so like I write a lot of code, so I need the full dexterity back, and they're not sure if I'll ever get it back. They also don't know what nerve I'll get back. So nerves take 2 years to grow back. So I won't know whether or not I have nerves in those hands for 2 years. I won't know um, what is even possible for me for recovery till my 6 month mark. So I just hit my month mark. So at 6 months, then they will give me an estimation of how much they think I can rebuild for my arm. So to answer your question, I have no idea. I'm in PT. My insurance covers like 30 PT sessions a year, which is ridiculous. That's not enough. Um, and my copay is like $60. So I just pay for a lot of it out of pocket. And that's with good health insurance. Like I have good health insurance, and I don't know how most people deal with this kind of stuff. I think GoFundMe is like the main way people deal with medical things nowadays. But the road to recovery is painful and completely unsure at this moment.
Yeah, when we think about what a catastrophic event like that could look like, you don't expect to get bit by a shark. No more you expect to, have a terrible car accident or, anything
But
else
car
that
accidents are
happens.
statistically so much more common. Like I literally drive a Subaru because it has the best crash test word like safety of basically any car, because I'm like statistically that is the way I will die. You know what? It's not statistically the way you die, Erica. Bleeding out on a beach from a shark
After dancing, having great mojito.
after
Yeah.
dancing. Like we danced all night the night before. Like it's
Mm.
just a really crazy experience, and the trauma. I also have to pay for like I also need EMDR and talk therapy on top of my 2 times a week PT. So, but thank
What's
God for family.
EMDR?
Oh, it's a type of therapy. You basically like move your eyes a lot, and you like follow a finger or you like tap. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. It's a type of
That helps with
therapy.
trauma?
Yeah,
Oh, okay. That's
yeah.
interesting. No, I'm not familiar with it. I'll have to look it up. Have you found that to be like really
As
helpful since it
helpful.
happened? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, none of this is going to change overnight. Like my life is going to be changed probably forever and won't get fixed anytime soon. Like I will probably be in physical therapy for over a year and maybe need more surgeries and maybe need to find a new career. And that's something that I'm really struggling with in this moment is this figuring out what my life looks like. I've really put a lot of my if you ask me how to describe myself, I usually say I'm a traveler and a programmer. And those are the two words I describe myself as. And to lose one of those is really hard.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. Do you feel like you'll have to switch careers or jobs?
I hope not they make one-handed like keyboards that I can learn how to use, but it's a different type, so I'd have to like relearn how to type. There's also dictation coding,
Hmm.
which is something I can learn how to do, but all of those things are like new things that I would have to learn how to do. I could also go into a field where I do less typing and more like writing emails and stuff, which you can do with just your phone or something like that. So a lot of that is in like the top of my mind. I'm hoping that I can keep programming. But interestingly enough, is I've had 6 people, no joke, 6 people when I tell them that I have been bit by a shark say, of all the people I know, I would bet you get bit by a shark over anyone else. And I was like, what does this mean? And I was like really offended at the beginning. I was like, this is not something to tell someone who's just had a horrible tragedy and might be permanently disabled. That is not polite, team. And someone explained it in a really great way. And they were like, all I meant is like, you have lived all over the world. You spend most of the time in the water and you've lived in beach cities. You have traveled everywhere. You have dove. There are some people who just really live life and you really live life. And because of that, you're exposed to more danger. And I was like, that's really helpful for me to understand because I was like, I don't understand why if someone's in a bad car accident, you're like, not like, well, you're a shitty driver, so I'm not surprised that you're not in a bad car accident.
Yeah, I mean, to that extent, yes. You mean you are an adventurer. I have followed your posts as you have traveled the world and worked nomadically over the past however many years. And so, not so much I ever thought about you getting bit by a shark for sure, but having adventures
Yeah.
and what that looks like. I think, just recently there was a young woman who did not make it after hiking and she fell into a part of a volcano
Yeah.
on a trip where she was on a guided hike. It wasn't that she
Hmm.
went off by herself somewhere in a space she shouldn't have been in. And she lost her life tragically, and they couldn't get to her for whatever
Oh my
reason. I've
goodness.
seen a lot of different reports that a lot of them didn't make sense to me so
Yeah.
much as to
There's
whether it was
also not the
possible.
safety like features that we have in the US that you're like
Yeah.
used to. So I've
Hmm.
been on like a lot of these type of guided hikes in rural Guatemala or rural Mexico and stuff. And the safety features that we experience are just like not as prevalent there. And you really have to, as like the hiker, make sure you have a buddy and you don't get moved from the group because like people get left pretty regularly on some of these hikes, unfortunately. And if I was not there, but that would be my guess. I think it was also a 900-foot drop for her, which means that there was very little likelihood that she was okay ever. Um, but yeah, also be really careful where you take selfies, everyone. I don't think that's what happened to this woman, but I see those types of things. I see this all the time, especially on hikes that are gorgeous. I just did Patagonia like less than a year ago, and I saw people climbing on these insane rocks to get like the perfect selfie. And I was just like, we are so far away from having anyone who could help you if you fell right now. And I don't think that's what happened to this woman. I really want to clarify that. And it doesn't matter if you do anything that can cause your death. Like, no one deserves to die. But just be always really careful because sometimes when you're looking at in your phone, like you can accidentally do stuff. And I've seen a lot of people fall off of hikes, luckily, and live. But it's something that I've seen at least two times. It's a terrifying thought. And
It
I
is a
love to
terrifying
hike,
thought. Yeah, I enjoy hiking too. I'm more of an urban hiker. I like the city,
much safer.
but it's yeah, a little bit for me anyway. But the idea of, living your life is great, and the idea of being an adventurer and being able to see things that everyone just doesn't get the opportunity to see. Snorkeling and being on sailboats for weeks at a time. Most people can't say that they've done that and really experience what that means. But I think all of those experiences put you in a position to be able to advocate for yourself and stay acutely aware of what you needed to do. Whereas somebody who might have just been out on the beach that day, who never done anything else but maybe go out to the beach and sun themselves, they may not have had that wherewithal to be able to advocate for themselves the way that they need to.
Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington.
Hi, my name is Aaron Ford,
Hi, my name is Nina Nova.
Hi, I'm Lori Lee
and you're listening to
Sticky Note Conversations.
with Erika Washington.
Hey y'all, I'm Erika Washington, a host, creator, and executive producer of Sticky Note Conversation. My life, my mind, is always running way too fast. So I jot down thoughts, questions about life, wish lists, goals, all on sticky notes. One sticky note was this podcast. Over the course of my journalism and social justice journey, I've met some really amazing people, but I hated that I couldn't talk longer and really dive into their lived experiences, their views of the world, and their dreams for the future. Sticky Note Conversation is for anyone who enjoys a really good conversation.
Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington.
I think a lot about how you have been able to live life, and people talked about going remote, especially during the pandemic. It's like, oh, okay, well, we don't really have to be in an office. We can be anywhere and work. And you've been remote for a good long time now and have lived in a lot of other places. You mentioned, what was that like for you, and what made you decide to leave Las Vegas and just, roam
Did
the
that.
world?
Yeah. Well, first off, for anyone who doesn't know, I am a 5'7", thick, curly, redhead white girl. Nowhere I have been has besides Scotland, has anyone been like, that is not an American. I stick out like a sore thumb literally everywhere I go, except for Scotland. I'm taller than most people in a lot of Latin America. I have curly red hair. I look very different. And so that was a very different awakening when I first started really solo traveling.
Like in
Passed
what
away.
way? Like in what way? What did that
Yeah, just
acutely
people
aware
stare
that
at
you
me all the
were
time. People
because
stare
you
at
were
me.
stared at you.
I was
Okay.
stared at. And the other thing is people never expect me to speak the language. So I speak English, Spanish, and Portuguese. And so I know what they're saying about me and in most of the places, right? And that's been really helpful for like my safety. But I've definitely been held up at gunpoint twice while being by myself. I've definitely been on hikes similar to the ones that I was describing where I got put in situations where I was uncomfortable and felt unsafe. I've definitely done a lot of things that, like, if I had kids, I probably wouldn't let them do. But my dad had already passed away, and he was the only one who had done any of these things. So no one knew to stop me from some of them. But I really think it was like a good experience overall. I remember a very specific situation where I was somewhere in Mexico, in Chiapas, and late at night, like it was getting towards dusk, and some lovely man came up to me and my two friends from the hostel, and it was just a group of us, three females, and he said in Spanish, he was like, "You guys need to leave now. It's time for you to go home. You should go home. It'll be safer." And like there was just a local who was just watching out for random strangers. He wasn't getting anything from us. He wasn't asking for money, anything, just being kind. So I think there's a lot of kindness in the world, and that's what a lot of this traveling has taught me. It's also taught me how to be really uncomfortable in situations and learn how to get through them. Moving to Brazil was very uncomfortable. Argentina was a lot easier because I went with a friend. When I moved to Brazil, I like moved by myself. And Rio de Janeiro, as we know, is not known for being the safest city in the world. So you can't put out your phone to like check directions and stuff like that.
What made you move
Um,
to a place that you knew was probably unsafe?
the women. I'm sorry, Eric. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on your podcast.
You can say that you were attracted to the culture and
The culture.
the feminine beauty
The
of
feminine
Brazil.
beauty of
Mhm.
Brazil. I also
Look,
like stayed a
I
long
ain't
time
mad
in
at you.
Colombia for it. Like I just started dating women who lived there is really like the case. And so I would be in places that I would consider not the safest in the world because like I
The
fall in
things
love.
we do for romance now.
Yeah, I've really given it my all when it comes to romance. I think the world generally is a lot safer than some of our traditional media makes it out to be, especially if you stay in different areas. And Americans have so much privilege because our currency, more privilege than I would say honestly any other country in the world, because our currency is so high that we can go pretty much anywhere and not feel a financial strain on it. So there's just so much privilege in having that kind of money. Because even if you work a $40,000 a year job and you live in a place where $40,000, the job allows you one big trip a year, and you go on that one big trip, you're pretty much, if you leave the country, you are going to be in a place where you are spending less money there than you would at back home just on your regular expenses. And that's a really big point of privilege. That I
The
think is
American
really
dollar.
overlooked. The American dollar
Yeah.
is a
Mhm.
big point of privilege.
So, what did you learn about privilege being abroad for so long?
Yeah. Well, I realized how different my life was. I was raised in an echo chamber. I went to like middle class elementary school, a middle class high school. I went out of state, but like not to a fancy school, just to an out of state school where all my friends, families all had the same size house that I did, that kind of thing. And I never realized how much of a point of privilege all of that was, especially traveling, being able to leave your city or your state, which is something that a lot of times most of my friends I don't think have passports. So even if you leave your state is a point of privilege that a lot of people don't get to have. I also dated two women that I can think of while I was in South America. And one was a mixed race Latina and which we would consider mixed race. They have a different name for it that I don't feel really comfortable saying. And then another Latina, and seeing how they were raised and their upbringing compared to my upbringing really helped me understand why people immigrate to the United States and why they're such harder workers than we are usually, as like just Americans, because we have been given so much throughout our whole lives that we don't even realize how complacent we have gotten. And I think I'm a hard worker, but it 100% comes from just like this complacency that we've always had, and being raised in a really safe country where there's a lot of like social nets to catch you and things like that. And it's not like Europe even has more social nets, but it's taught me an incredible amount. And there's the thing that I will say has also made a huge impact in privilege is that I recently started dating a white man, and seeing how people reacted to me dating these past, like most of the past women that I've dated who were generally women of color because I was in South America, to a white man is insane. The way people treat you is just completely different.
because because of it seeming to be just a regular
No, because of
cisgendered
racism.
heterosexual.
Well, yeah, I guess there's that's part of it, right? But that part you expect. What I didn't expect is the racism, like the way
Mm.
people don't follow us, or people will just be like, "Well, just let me know if you need anything. We're in the back," or whatever. It's very different culture around two white people versus like a white person and a mixed race person, with natural curly black hair, that type of like a very traditional facial structure for a black woman is very different. And I got to experience that not just in the United States, but all through Europe.
Yeah, and I've said it before on this podcast that the first time that I went to Italy was the first time that I felt American, because here I'm a black person, I'm a black
Yeah.
woman. You see me coming, I'm black. And that's great. That's fine. I want you to see all of that. I don't ever want to hear about somebody not seeing color because it's right here in front of your face. But when I went to Italy and walked around, I was an unidentifiable black person. And so then when I opened my mouth and started talking, their whole demeanor changed, because then I'm American. I'm not an African immigrant, there to suck the life out of their systems or whatever it is they
Yep.
seem to think that are happening with folks who are immigrating from various African countries. And because there's a huge amount of racism and a huge amount of disdain, similar to what you see here with Mexican immigrants that come in, or other South American immigrants that come into the United States. And so when I opened my mouth and started talking, I had never in my life experienced a white person relaxing. Like, I'd never seen that happen before. Like, when they tense up because they see black folks coming, where you grab your purse a little harder, or they're looking at you a little funny, or they're trying to figure out why your hair is doing what it's doing. All of those things that happen that, yes, you do become used to, because it's always there. Someone's always in your business looking at you in some sort of way. And so when you start speaking, and then they're like, "Oh, hello. How are you?
Yes.
What can I help show you?" Because I'm American, they think I got some money. They think I'm getting ready to spend my money in here. And they're going to show me all of the things. And then they want to know where you're from. And when I said Las Vegas, then it just really like, whoo, Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Wow. That's exciting. Then they might as well invite me over to dinner. And I never in my whole entire life experienced that until I went to Italy. And it was a very strange experience. And I was like, oh, it's because I'm American. I'm like, oh, you can tell I'm American? Huh, look at that. Where in America, like, do I feel American? I don't even know what that means. Like, I don't hate America. I live here. I was born here. My grandparents were born here. I'm pretty sure my ancestors helped build this place. So, but to love America and to love being American feels like a difficult statement when you always feel like you're on the defense in the place that you live.
So when I was abroad multiple times, people would like introduce me as like, "Oh, this is Emily. She's from the United States. So in South America, they only call you from the United States because all of it is America.
America,
But in
yes.
Europe, they always say American. And so that was something that like definitely we went back and forth on a lot. But they would always say, but she's one of the good ones. Like she gets it. She spent some time like unlearning things. And I was like, there's a lot to unpack with that as like a person with who works in a tech system who has a completely remote job. And I think there's something to be said a lot about remote workers living abroad and how careful you have to be to not disrupt the local economy. So there's a couple of places that I've been, Mexico City, Medellin, Colombia, and Buenos Aires. All are places that have been massively affected by digital nomads moving to them. Those are the places I've been. Obviously, Bali, a lot of places in Thailand. Those are all ones too, but I haven't seen this experience. So I can't say what it is. But from what I've seen, these places, and I've been going to Mexico City for years. One of my friends has diabetes, and that's like where he always got his medication from. So we used to go down there and get medication, and it was great. So we've been going there for like 7 years now. And there are all these signs nowadays that say like white people go home because so many white people have like moved there, haven't learned any Spanish, and have bought houses that were meant for three families and converted it into one. You see the same thing in Medellin, Colombia. You've got a lot of digital nomad, like tech people specifically, who move there and buy the first level or like the top level of an entire apartment building because it's what 200,000, 500,000 US dollars. And if they're from San Francisco, they've got that kind of money. They buy it, they level it, they make a giant penthouse. Well, that was 15 people's houses that no longer can live in the city that their families, like you were saying, built, that their grandparents built, that they've always been. And so I obviously do digital nomading, but I try really hard not to use Airbnbs. I spend a lot of time finding Facebook groups for people who want to just rent out their apartment because they're leaving for a while. And I spend a lot of time learning the languages. While I'm there and before I go there. I think that's really important, especially if you're going to really assimilate into a culture, because it's not fair for you to bring your American values and push it into a culture that might not have the same ones. So, anyways, that's my soapbox about digital nomading because it can be really horrific on local economies. Like, there are so many places that locals cannot live anymore because of how expensive it has gotten because of digital nomading.
I mean, it's modern colonizing,
That's
and
what
I
I
think
call it,
that,
yeah.
yeah, and people aren't aware in that way because, again, when you have a privilege to be able to work remotely and you have the privilege of having the money to get there and spend money there, and your dollar goes a lot further, so things are cheaper for you, but then you're using up resources in another area. And you're not thinking about that. You're just like taking Instagram photos and like, look at me and look what I can do. That I think that is really important to think about how our drop, like how we throw a rock in the water and it ripples out, that ripple effect disturbs so many other things. So, I mean, you mentioned learning the language and all of that and not using an Airbnb. What do you suggest should be like rules of the trade if you want to visit other places and you're able to be a remote worker and still experience life and be amongst the people, but not be so disruptive? Like, how do you really do that?
Yeah. Tinder is great. Like if you were looking to date, like finding human beings or dating profile programs and like dating locals because they will show you a lot more information. Like obviously do it if you're looking for love. I have lived in these
Right. Don't
countries
just
for a
be
long
on
time.
Tinder just to be
Don't
trying to
just be
find a
on
place
Tinder.
to live. That's
No.
that's a different type of nomading. Those are called
That is not what we're
those are called
doing. Yes.
hobosexuals.
Yeah, that's not what we're doing. But I mean, I've fallen in love and like moved to these countries to be with these human beings that I think are just some of the most amazing people in the world. But because I've done that, I've been able to find ways to stay in more local sectors rather than staying with digital like nomads. So what happens is if you go to a place, a lot of digital nomads just hang out with other digital nomads. There's actually entire companies that are set up, Erica, that like just set up structures for more white people to go to the fanciest resort and rent out the whole fancy resort and do yoga every day and things like that. So I will say that like if you can find folks outside of the digital nomad community that you can befriend, that really helps. And also like go to local things. It depends on how safe the area that you're in. If you're in Europe, it's incredibly easy to go do anything. If you're in Bogota, Colombia, like obviously you've got to be a little bit more careful about where you go. But if you spend time at local bars and restaurants and you try really hard with the language and you don't expect them to serve you in the same way and you take up less space, you try to make yourself small. Because no matter what, you're going to disrupt the economy. There is no ethical way to do digital nomading to me. Because even if I live with a partner, I'm still spending more money at Starbucks than a normal person would there because I love Starbucks and Starbucks is my culture. And the reason Starbucks exists there is because white people go to Rio, you know? And so they're like, as much as I think about it, I'm still going to make decisions like that because sometimes I want to Starbucks. And that's just going to be part of that transition. So I don't think there is really any fully ethical way. Find ways to support local communities. Also, when I was in Brazil, I did a little bit of coding for like people who lived there, like helping teach them a little bit of coding and stuff like that. When I spent a lot of time in Mexico, I was able to do some like passing out food stuff, like with like a company that did it. And so finding ways to volunteer to kind of give back to it, but not using Airbnbs, I think is the biggest one.
Why not using Airbnbs?
Yeah, so Airbnbs are generally bought out by people from other countries. They are not people who live in that country. So if you can find an Airbnb that is actually owned by a person from that country, great. But I will say, in my experience, it's always a person from Europe or a company from China that owns most of these big Airbnbs. And then they hire like a local person to like take care of it while they're gone. And what that does is it makes sure that there's no space for that family. That house is built for a family, right? Like we build enough houses for the amount of families that live there. That house wasn't built for an American who wants to stay there.
Mm-hmm. So then do you stay at hotels or?
Yeah, I stay in hotels when I
or?
start. Hostels are the best. You can get a private room in a hostel for the same price or like less than a hotel room. And you can meet other travelers to go and explore new things when you first start off. And then usually
I'm scared to death of hostels. That doesn't sound very.
I'm not scared of them. I mean, some of the hostels I've stayed at are like fancier than any hotel I've stayed at.
Maybe because the hostel down the street from our office looks.
Yeah, you don't stay at that one. That one is like ranked the worst hostel in the world. You know that, right?
No, I didn't, but I could tell by looking at it. So that's how I think about hostels. As I think about the one that's on Las Vegas Boulevard, and I'm like, no, I don't even walk past there. Actually,
no. The one on Las Vegas Boulevard had like a massive amount of like sexual assaults, like assaults. Yeah.
Okay, so it probably should just be shut down.
It definitely should, but the problem is like Aussies and stuff like from other countries are always looking for hostels because that's what they expect. But Central America and South America and Europe have great hostel cultures, in my opinion. It just depends on how much you spend too. Like I've had hostels in Belize where like I was on the beach and then my window opened up to the ocean. It's not bad. It's not bad, Erica. But there's also an age thing. So like if you don't want to hang out with a bunch of 18-year-olds, it's not going to be your place.
I think I'll leave that to the others.
That's totally fine. But hotels are also a really great option. I try really hard to stay in hotels over Airbnbs because of that. That being said, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes all the time and have to book an Airbnb. This has happened multiple times. But in general, just being aware of how you're spending and not buying property. I really think that's the key to success here is that like if you are going to digitally nomad, you really probably shouldn't buy a huge amount of property there and like build your empire because that property was by people's houses.
Yeah. And that is a big push. Buy property, somewhere else that you can retire at later or that you can rent out or what have you, because then that's another source of income for you. But you're not renting to locals, you're usually renting to tourists who can afford more in that way. So, yeah, I think there's sustainable and social responsibility both in our neighborhoods and globally about how we spend our money and how we think about how that affects other people. Fast fashion, buying really cheap clothing that doesn't last and throwing them into landfills and all of that. Like there's so many ways in which we don't even realize just how wasteful we are and how the earth is now our big giant trash can.
And I will say that the other thing is I try to buy as locally as possible, which is pretty easy in most of Central and South America. There aren't giant conglomerates usually there. But if you need sunscreen, instead of going to the Walgreens, that there is a Walgreens there, you buy it from the guy who's selling it on the beach. That's going to feed his kids. Are you going to pay one extra US dollar? Maybe it might even be cheaper because he brings it from a different area. Buy the sarongs from the beach ladies as well. Go to the restaurants that have been family owned for 3 generations, that kind of stuff. Because then your money, even if it is affecting their economy, which it is in the long term, is affecting a family, not a conglomerate. That being said, I'm not an expert. I think there's probably a lot more that I could be doing, just like I think there's more we can all be doing. But I always have this conversation with folks when they're thinking of digitally nomading. It is not their responsibility to know English to help you. And it is your responsibility to try your best to not affect their economy in a negative way so that you don't displace people in less than 5 years.
So a question I ask everyone.
Mhm.
What is your version of the American dream?
I lived so many places and I had to get visas and things like that. But girl, I'm able to go wherever I want, whenever I want. And no one else can do that. Like dating folks and being involved with like having friends from other countries, they can't come to the United States without getting like their blood drawn and having 12 people prove something and having $3 million in their bank accounts. These are all over exaggerations, but just insane things. And I think that that's really unfair how we've created this visa system. So people from other countries need a visa to visit the United States, but some countries don't and some countries do. And I know has a lot to do with international trade. But these are human beings. They aren't trade. They aren't commodities. They are human beings. We have some of the best national parks in the world. We have some beautiful things to see. And if they have the means to come, then they should be able to without visas. And I think that's a big part of what my American dream is for America is visa-free entry, which I'm sure I'm going to get a little bit of hate for.
I say it all the time. Borders aren't real. They're imaginary lines that somebody
They were
made
made up by white people at some point.
But they're imaginary lines that now all of a sudden you've crossed this imaginary line and now you need all this paperwork to get over here to do this, that, and the third. And I don't know that I think that makes any sense. I also don't really believe in ownership. Do I own my house? Yes. But when I think about it, I'm the caretaker of this home for however long, and then hopefully it goes to someone else. Because you can't really own land. You can't own water. You can't own air. And so to have this home that I own, that I do love, my house is super old and it has had many a family in it, and hopefully it will have many families in it after mine. And so it's my job to caretake it, no different than the land, whatever space I occupy, so that someone else can also enjoy the space. So we're just caretakers. And I think if we think about it that way, and like, this is mine, because we teach 4-year-olds to not think that way. Mine. But then we grow up, this is mine. So, yeah. Emily, I am glad you're alive. I am glad.
Me too, Erica. I'm so glad I'm alive because I was very much almost dying.
And I am glad you were here to talk to me today and talk about your experience. I'm glad that you made it through, and I wish you all the best in your healing journey. And if there's anything that you need, please reach out with your good hand. Thank you. And y'all, this has been Sticky Note Conversations, and we will see y'all next week.
Thanks for listening to Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington. Hosted and executively produced by Erika Washington, with editing by Black Gypsy LLC and Simone Endres. Special thanks to KUNV 91.5 in Las Vegas. This show is powered by Make It Work Nevada, a project of Tides Advocacy.